Hello people and welcome to the NEPodcast. And with me today is Dennis Engelhard. Did I do that correctly?
You did, yes. And hi.
Yes, hello. The creator of Mega Man Rock and Roll. And despite me studying German for 5 years, I still can't talk any of it. Because I went to YouTube, I was like, I have to make sure I'll get this right. So I put in Engelhard pronunciation. And the guy who pronounced it didn't have the D at the end. I was like, that's probably wrong. It's like Engelhard.
They have a pronunciation of that on YouTube?
Yes. Does that mean anything in German?
Not really. Engel is our word for angel, but I don't even think that's where it's coming from. It's just a word. A heads up, I live exactly next to a church. I have closed every door and every window, but the bells on a Sunday can get quite annoying.
How often does that happen?
Well, every full hour they just ring the bell the amount of hours. So that's one thing. But these aren't so loud. But it's Sunday. They are having their thing there. They have started, this is over, but when they are done, they'll ring the bells again like crazy. This might take 2 minutes or whatever.
Well, you probably get used to it, huh?
Totally get used to it. That's the interesting thing. I don't even hear that anymore. If I have guests and they start this shit, I don't bat an eye and everybody looks like, what the hell is this?
That's another, like living next to a church, that's one thing. Living next to a cemetery, that's another thing. You see all those gravestones from your window every time you wake up. We actually had a chance to meet. Last year I was in Germany. Went to Berlin and then straight to Dresden. But I think our schedules just didn't match up.
Yes, and not for that trip. Berlin is basically the other part of the country.
We drove through Germany on a work trip. I actually went to a retro video game store in Dresden and bought DuckTales 2 and some other games. I was wondering if, do you still have a lot of retro video game stores, or did I just get lucky? Or
I think you got pretty lucky there. I wouldn't know any store like that around here.
So I was like, I'll just make a search because I didn't really know anything about the area. Just happened to find this store. It was like 2 kilometers from me. I was like, I'll walk. It was pretty amazing stuff there. Like everything you could imagine was there. Ever heard of Games Broker Dresden UG Limited Liability?
Don't think I have.
Rock and Roll. How long did that development take approximately? Can you recall anymore?
Yes, I can. I started in late 2017. So that would be a little more than 2 years.
I thought you were working on it for 10 years. I just never asked. You just basically started last week and you made it all alone. Pretty much.
Yes.
How does one man make an entire game in 3 years and so you made the engine from scratch. You made absolutely everything in 3 years, huh?
Yes, it depends on what you think when you're saying engine. I used Godot, so I have the basics. It can read controls, it has the controller set up, it can put out graphics and music, but the physics for the Mega Man game, yes, everything was done from scratch. But mostly because I wanted to do that. I wanted to learn how that works. If I just take something that's already done, I have to figure out how they did it.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe I can't do some things that I want.
Yeah, you don't really learn it much if you use somebody else's. Use Game Maker or Megamix engine or something like that. Then if you encounter problems, probably those are not easy to fix. You don't know how they work. And I think Megaphilex used C++ or something for Unlimited, and it's gotta be a difficult thing. You have to look at all the previous Mega Man games, check how high the jump is, check how long the slide is, then mark those all down and then just copy those.
At the beginning, I actually had 2 screens set up, and I had Mega Man 9 running on one and Rock'n'Roll on the other, and we connected with the controller and just checked if they would both do the same thing if I pressed the buttons.
If you could get like 2 windows right next to each other, or better yet, like right on top of each other, have some transparency on the other window somehow.
Yeah, I could have done that, but I don't think you would have noticed if it's not that spot on. Even the official Mega Man games have differences in their jump curve and whatnot.
Yeah, somehow people still notice.
Yeah, of course they did, but it's playable if you get it right. He has to jump 3 tiles high, and you have to be able to get over a pit of 4 blocks wide, just barely, and this way, this is basically the rules of the game. And if you have that set up, you can get used to the rest.
Yeah, not everyone is so concerned about the rules of like Mega Man games. They just make them and they're like, close enough, ship it. So did you have some sort of a tribe that you wanted to make it work, like as close as possible? So I'm guessing the situation is you grew up with Mega Man and then you're like, well, I have to respect the franchise and make it as close as possible.
Yeah, sure. But the funny thing is that the first game I ever had was Dr. Wily's Revenge on the Game Boy. And everything is different there. So, this is the main route for nostalgia. Then my first NES game was 4. Still my favorite to this day. I think you can relate.
Yes. And people still say it's nostalgia or something. Like, we played Mega Man 4 as the first game, but it's actually the game is pretty good.
Yes, and I think I can filter that because, as I said, my main nostalgia is for Dr. Wily's Revenge, and that game that has problems.
Yeah.
And I can easily see that. I don't care when I play it now, but they are definitely there, and for Mega Man 4, there's just way less of them, and I think it's of the NES titles, it's definitely the best one. I think of all the series, my favorite is 9. Yeah,
when Inafune said his favorite is 2, and pretty much everyone at Capcom, I think, have said their favorite is 2. I think they're just catering to the most of the audience who think that's the best game. I mean, they can't all think 2 is the best.
Probably not. I think you would just have different tastes among the team if they worked on all the games. And I never got that with 2. I think I have more fun playing Mega Man 1 than 2, even though this is buggy as hell, but...
It's just a well-made game. I mean, Mega Man 1 has that weird feeling. It's done in a very... I don't know how to say it. It's like very strict. It has very strict rules on how it works. And all the enemy designs are so well done. It's like Mario. I always compare it to like Mario 1. It only has a few enemies, but they use them so well, it works out.
I think where Mega Man really shined was that actually the enemies are reacting to your presence, because Mario and other games of the time, they were just going back and forth. A lot of things in Mega Man 1, I mean, it's pretty basic. You get too close to a mat, it opens up and shoots you in the face, but it notices you are there. That is pretty nice. Yeah,
it's like in Mario, well, the green Koopas drop off the edge and the red shield ones don't. They just go back and forth. But like in Mega Man 1, the screw bombers, like they activate when you get like close enough and stuff like that.
Exactly.
So it feels like the enemies are really after you instead of just pacing back and forth. I think that's probably one of the bigger reasons Mega Man was so popular, because it actually felt like everyone was after you.
Yes, that was good. Then certainly beating a robot master and getting his weapon was a really nice thing.
Yeah, people didn't. I don't think people like actively used the weapons in the stages. They were like, well, who can I kill with this weapon now? I don't think a lot of people actually use the weapons in the stages.
In the Robot Master stages, I think I usually did not, but in the end game, definitely.
Yeah, there are like a handful of situations where you probably would. But doing all of those deranged challenges on Snupster definitely highlights the pros and cons of the weapons. And now every time you see a comment on YouTube, they're like, well, this weapon is so good, you just didn't find all the good things about it. And then I just linked the Snupster episode where we used it.
I actually did that for rock and roll during testing. I did a weapon challenge for every weapon just to make sure there is no glitches or bugs occurring. So if I did that, I would have shot at every enemy at the game with every weapon.
Everything and anything is horrible if you only use that weapon for like the entire game. There's always going to be problems, except if it's the metal blade. Then no problems arise.
Yes, I'm still not sure if that was intentional, or I don't know if they gave themselves a lot of ammo for debugging and forgot to take it out.
Yeah, because they're like, we have to have a way to test the game. Just have like a 500 ammo or metal blade.
Yeah, because I just don't think you would do something that is that broken. It's like, hey, I have a weapon that can shoot in any direction and deals insane amount of damage, and to compensate that, I gave it unlimited ammo. Like, what?
That's also true for the quick boomerang. Also has like the same amount of ammo, and it kills absolutely everything in the game.
Yeah, but at least that has short range.
Yeah, that's true. But you can hold it down.
Yeah.
It is weird. And then the super arm on Megma 1, it's like, well, you can only use this weapon twice in the entire game, where there's a block. Should have been able to lift those blocks from the ground.
Or you use... I think I have seen this somewhere, maybe a fan game, where you lift a smaller block from the ground if there is none, but big ones in the stage you can lift. I can't remember where that was, but that was actually pretty smart, because you at least could use the weapon all the time.
Well, did you grow with the NES, or did you have like other consoles? I mean, you had the Game Boy. That's how much I gathered now.
First of all, I had the Game Boy, and that was... 92? So the Super Nintendo was already coming, and we had this basically German version of Nintendo Power, and the issue that introduced Super Nintendo had Mega Man 4 in it. So I started annoying my parents because I wanted the old console because I had just seen that, and it was amazing. This was my favorite Game Boy game, and you get that magazine, and I didn't know there were other games, and you see Mega Man 4, which means oh my god, there's this and 3 others. I need to do this.
Yeah, the same kind of deal happened with me with Mega Man 4. I got Mega Man 4 first, and then for my birthday, like a year later, I got Mega Man 1, and I was like, oh, I didn't really understand the difference, but I understood that Mega Man 1 was very different, because I got that after. I was like, this is way different than 4, and I don't know why, but I still liked it. I could never get past the copy robot though. I got to it, but then I just, like, my 4-year-old brain couldn't handle it.
Especially Mega Man 1 is broken in some parts where you just have to know how to cheese it. I mean, Fireman, it just goes mental the instant you want to fight him normally. So probably the easiest way is to just jump and shoot like you do when you cheese him. But that's obviously not the most fun way to do it.
No, I just always went guns blazing when I was a kid. You can win the damage race. I know about this. I think you have like 2 health left at the end. But you can do it. And that's the way everyone probably did with the Buster.
Yeah, so obviously the first time I fought him was on the Game Boy games. I just used the Ice Slasher and everything was fine.
Yeah. They didn't really they just dropped the bosses in the room and they're like, well, it's a boss. It needs to be hard. Just give it some attacks and don't think about it. And that's the result.
Yes, but there is difference. I mean, there is at least some patterns in Mega Man 1, so I wonder what happened with the ones that just go crazy, because Iceman is he's executing his pattern. It's pretty simple, but that's fine. That's an old game. But he just does that and gets faster. That's perfectly fine for me. But then you have firemen freaking out, not sure what to. Well, you can learn Elegman, but probably not as a kid. Then you just go for the weakness. But Bombman is basically fine too.
He's probably the best one. I would say he's probably the best Robot Master in Mega Man 1. Unless you look at my list now and then I contradict myself. So better not look at that.
I'm pretty sure someone in the comments will.
Yeah, I know. I'm gonna disable the comments. So I also know you like Mario too.
Yes, I do.
Because of the whales in rock and roll. Did you have Mario 2 growing up?
I had Mario 2 and I got it so late that I actually knew it was another game because, like I said, we had this magazine here and they did a lot of articles on basically useless knowledge, but that this game was actually Doki Doki Panic and they reskinned it. I knew that. I think that helped because that game probably just gets a lot of shit because it's different and people didn't expect that as a sequel to Mario 1, and it probably gets worse if you have Mario 1 and 3 and they are very similar and in the middle is this other game.
Yeah, and I've talked about it a lot, but I think Mario 2 is my favorite Mario game. I think there's just something about it that's so addicting. Like Mario 3, of course, great game, but Mario 2 is so different. It's kind of the same situation I have with Mega Man 1. They're kind of similar games, Mega Man 1 and Mario 2 in some way. They had that weird, like empty level design, but at the same time it's kind of threatening. There's something very fun about it.
Yeah, definitely.
Except if you play with the princess, then you're just ruining the game.
Because you just float over everything, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why that was a thing. It's like, who's not gonna pick her? And then, of course, Mario, kind of useless as well. Does everything average.
Which is probably not what you want as soon as you know what is going on in the stage, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Like, there was no situation in Mario 2 where you would pick Mario. Like, hey, I need Mario for this level. That just never happened.
No, most of it was probably the princess. When you know there is some of the really tough platforming, you just went for her.
And I think you needed, like, Luigi once for one of those high jumps to get to the secrets.
Yes, but he steered really awkwardly, so you only did that when you had to.
Yeah. That could be a challenge on its own. Luigi only now had moonwalk and jet speed. You're done. Gonna slide all over the place.
Didn't they do that on one of the later Mario games where Luigi is actually the hard mode? I think they did. It's basically like Proto Man. He has advantages, but there are things to make up for this, and I think it's the awkward steering again, but he has this really high jump.
Oh, and that's the Japanese Mario too. You can pick between Mario and Luigi.
Yes, you could, and otherwise it was basically a Kaizo hack of Mario 1.
Yeah. Luckily, I can't remember the fellow who was in charge of Nintendo America, but he was the guy who said, hey, this game kind of sucks. I'll make another one. That's why they reskinned Doki Doki Panic. Thank God they did. And added a run button.
Oh, right, it didn't have that.
No, that's weird. We have a platform game with no run button. Kind of like Mega Man.
Did they not release Mario 2 because he thought it sucked, or because it was too hard?
No, it was too hard and it was too similar.
Well, it certainly was. They just used the same engine.
Yeah, I think his complaint was that it's kind of the same game, but now it's so difficult that nobody's gonna able to beat it. I think the fellow even he blamed Miyamoto of depression or something. Like, what are you doing? Where there are a bunch of games that shaped the development of rock and roll, or did you just come up with things from your creative mind?
Ooh, I'd have to think about that. I mean, definitely there were probably inspirations that I can't even tell you right now, because there's just stuff in the back of my head. I played a lot of video games when I was a kid, and so I'm pretty sure this influenced this game while I made it. But I was mostly looking back to Mega Man. I played a lot of Wily's Revenge before I started, and then when I started development, I just played several times through the first 6, just to refresh my memory a little. And you look at it in another way when you're actually making a game like that. You're paying attention to different things, so that was probably good.
Yeah, you start to notice things like how Mega Man 3's jumping is very different, and how Mega Man 5 you can just charge buster everything to do it, and how Mega Man 6 you can't jump from a slide, and then you start adding these things up, and you're like, well, have to fix all of these things for this new game.
Yes, and when you play it a lot, you actually notice that Mega Man 1 has this velocity where when you release the D-pad, he actually has to slow down, and in Mega Man 3 onward, he just stops instantly, and it's so much better.
Yeah, it is. I think they were like trying too hard for the mechanics on the first one. Didn't really know what they were doing yet.
They were experimenting, and it works for other games. I mean, Mario games are always like that, where you release it and then he slows down very slowly. So if you don't want to run into a pit, you actually have to turn around and go in the other direction. So you're always moving. I think it works for that, but it doesn't work for Mega Man. So making him like stop right away was probably a really good idea.
Yeah, in Mario, you're like always fighting your own actions. You're like always running, and then you have to stop and turn the other way and run back, and you're just always going back and forth. I was just trying to imagine what Mega Man would be if you ran, if Mega Man had a run button.
They were experimenting with the mechanics. I think I read somewhere that Inafune said he can't duck because that would have made the first one way too easy, and then they came up with a slide, and that's actually a nice idea. If that was your problem, that you could just duck and get around everything, because for the slide you have to at least go forward, and that can lead to other problems and it doesn't go on forever. So that was a smart thing.
Did you make the stages like one by one for rock and roll, or did you just did you have them all set up and then you just kept working on all of them?
No, I did it basically one by one. Sometimes I took a break and worked on another one, but I think that there never were more than 2 at the same time that I did. Remember
the first stage you completed?
Yes, but the first few stages I completed you've never seen, because I was just learning the ropes and how to do that. So I had 3 Robot Masters done and the intro stages. Then I made 3 more Robot Masters, scratched the first 2 and the intro stages, made new intro stages, and that is the first build you got.
Yeah, it's always like when you learn things, you have to make content to learn, and then that content is like, well, now I know more, let me scrap all of that and do it from the beginning.
Yeah, especially in the start, you make so much progress. It was always like I had these 6 stages done, and I looked at the last one and at the first one, and there was just, oh my god, this is so bad. So yeah, and you can't be afraid to just throw it away and start over. At least not in the beginning. I mean, if you always do that, you never get done. So,
but also a lot of people just make them and they never go back to check their old work. They're just good enough. And then when people expect something of Mega Man quality, then that's a problem.
Yes, certainly. But for some of the games you have on your show, it's really strange because if you don't know enough about Mega Man to at least have an estimate of how high he jumps, why are you even passionate about this and start making a game? It's this is always so silly to me when nothing works like a Mega Man game. Why did he make a Mega Man game?
Yeah, that's what I was asking. Right when I maybe started 2 years ago, when I started to realize how many Mega Man fan games there are, I was like, well, usually you make something because you love making it. You don't just do it for no reason. And some people do it well, I'm learning the code. And the first attempt is Mega Man. Excuse me. It's like the worst possible thing you could do. You, if you release it, I mean, that's the problem. But if you just do it for your own amusement and you practice, yeah, sure, make a Mega Man game, but please don't release it if it's your first project and you don't know what you're doing and Mega Man jumps 3 times as high.
Yes, but I'm not even sure if practice helps there. You cannot practice giving a shit, and because I mean, okay, I knew a little bit how to code, but other than that, rock and roll certainly was my first project. And there are other problems that came with it. I mean, the performance on slower computers is absolutely horrible, and that is certainly because I just learned how this engine works, and the code just sucks. But you can polish what the player sees is so much that this is less of an issue. I mean, it would certainly be nicer if it ran on slower computers, but the game itself, I think I got the mechanics down. So, and the games you have on your show a lot don't even do that. It's just strange.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Like when people practice on something like game development, please don't practice with Mega Man and then release it. That's a different thing than, of course, if you have the perfect game, of course, like you said, your first project was rock and roll, but you know a lot of things about Mega Man, but usually people who practice with Mega Man, they don't even know much about it. They just well, I played Mega Man 2 once, and now I'm practicing on Mega Man game. So I think that's the problem. They just don't know how the mechanics work in the first place, and then they don't even try to recreate it. They just make it as close as they remember it from 25 years ago, or however many years it's now been. Don't even remind me. I'm still 90s was 10 years ago.
Yes, I have that problem too. It's just when somebody mentions how old a certain movie is, always I'm like, wait, what?
I asked Megaphil X this same question because I've slept since then. Did you come to me or did I come to you?
You mean for rock and roll? I yes. Did come to you when I had an actual demo ready that had all these bad stages removed. I did write an email to you. I had just while I worked on rock and roll, I had YouTube running and checked out some Mega Man stuff, and then I think I was googling for Unlimited, and I found your episode on Spikeman's stage. I think that's right. That's the first thing I saw of you. And then the YouTube algorithm did its job, and you just were in my recommendations every day.
That's gonna be harsh for people who don't like me, but it's every day. His face is there again. I've seen people complain about that. It's like, I don't even watch his videos, I hate him. And then their whole front page is just me. That's gonna suck.
Can't you just right click and say don't recommend? I think that works.
Yeah, but somehow I always come back. Yeah, I can't. My memory is so bad. I had to ask Phil, how did we start even doing anything? So you're trying to tell me I was the first tester?
Yes, you were. I was. I needed someone at least besides me who would check that out, and it just got more from there. I mean, Tom was in pretty early on.
Yes, and then we ended up having like 7 testers, and I probably did the least amount of testing.
Yes, but that was fine. I mean, everyone just did what they could. It's nobody's actual job, so it's perfectly fine if they do a different amount of testing.
Yeah, and yet still somehow I ruined the game. You made it too hard.
Yes, that's always funny because that's just not how that works. I mean,
yeah, it's like the developer doesn't have a say on their own. It's always somehow people think that the testers like overrule everything.
Yes, but I think that's kind of related to how they see the developer, because in some criticisms you certainly see that they think the developer has absolutely no business in making what he wants and just what the masses demand, and it's like, no, I do this in my free time. I can do whatever the fuck I want.
We still seem to have like 2 different communities playing Mega Man games. It's those people who were introduced to Mega Man through like Smash and other things a few years ago, and then we have the old school gamers, and then there's a bit of a gap on what people think Mega Man should be and shouldn't be, and then the other half doesn't like what you're doing and the other does, and it's always kind of difficult making a game that everyone would like, which is impossible.
If you even try that, you will just make something that nobody likes. Or, I mean, everyone will probably find it tolerable, but that's probably more what you're going for when you do this as your actual job, because you have to make money and you don't care who gives you $60. But for smaller artists, indie game developers, and I mean, I'm literally one guy coming home from work and working on that game. It doesn't get more indie. You want to make something that you are passionate about, and you want to share it with people who have similar taste. And I think that is what you should do.
The Unlimited Lives discussion is just happens every time when you have a bit of a harder game. The old school people think that should have lives, it should be should have game overs, should be the way it always was, and new players kind of want to like plow through the game and not really they don't want to redo anything, which kind of goes against your vision of rock and roll, I suppose, because you wanted to make it as close to the originals as possible. And then I guess you had a target audience in mind, kind of.
I certainly had, and I definitely wanted to recreate how I felt playing the game, because that was very important to me, because I knew very early in the development that it would have in the end this final letter to my father. And like the Mega Man was one of the first Game Boy games. I mean, I had Tetris, Super Mario Land, Mega Man. And the other ones, okay, you cannot finish Tetris. I was through Super Mario Land pretty fast, and I played so much Mega Man Wily's Revenge with my dad, and he actually showed me to, because you're just a kid when you meet a Mega Man boss, you panic and he kills you.
Yeah.
So he was like, look at what he does. you can predict that. I was 10 and I figured out how to pattern lock Alec Man all by myself, just with the help of my dad. And it seems to be not so well known. It was really funny. I posted my first Snupster % run of Wily's Revenge, and people in your Discord saw that and were like, wait, you can do that to Alec Man? That was really funny to me, because I've been doing that for 25 years.
Yeah, I remember having the same kind of memories. I was like there's the Flintstones games on the NES. I remember I couldn't beat like one of the first bosses, and I think I was scared of something because I was like 4. So I remember I had to call my father to beat the boss for me like every time. It's like those kind of memories that the games in which you for like your whole life you remember those moments.
I had this too, and he actually pushed me to do better because I was always afraid of Anchor when we got there, and he then made deals when I was like, "Can you do Anchor for me?" He said, "Then you have to do Quickman." And the funny thing was, the first time he said that, then I actually did, and that wasn't that easy, at least not that I can remember, because I think in my mind every robot master had only one weakness, so I brought him to half health with the time stopper, and then I always busted him. I never tried out and figured out that Firestorm was a secondary weakness, and I think he's really easy on the Game Boy game. If you just do that, you can take away half his health bar with the time stopper, and then go with Firestorm.
That was kind of the reason why I started doing the no-miss thing in the first place. It's to learn how the games actually work. Like, not until you do like a weird challenge or a crazy thing, you don't really know. But then you started actually paying attention and respecting how the games were made.
Yes, and okay, I never did no miss, but Buster only no damage was something I always tried, even as a kid when I had these games.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend no miss. You lose your hair.
I think that's probably nothing you even come up with as a kid. But Buster only is pretty obvious. So
yeah, I don't think so.
For you just added one more hurdle to what Rome Mithril was doing, right? I think that was it. Yeah.
Because I kept watching his episodes and the endless amounts of bugger shouts. I was like, there's gotta be a way to bump this up a notch, and I was like, can you do this no miss? And then I found out he did like Cutman stage, and he was like, I can't do this. I was like, hey. I didn't really research anything, because I just went in and recorded Cutman. I was like, well, that was kinda easy, kinda possible. And then the more that I kept making those episodes, the less I believed in myself.
Were they all possible, or?
There's like a few exceptions, like Flame Mass stage. You have to like charge those weird platform things.
You have to knock him in the fire, yes.
And then you have to start charging before or like during the screen transition, so you don't like miss a shot doing that. And it's always somebody finds something that you did wrong, and then you have to redo it. And like I remember the countless times when we had to redo Flame Man, and I think my run is still invalid on it. I just never went back. And Phelan was like, well, you have to go back. But I just never did. Yeah, you need to have all the time in the world if you want to start some weird challenge, like no miss. That's all you'll be doing for the next like 5 years at least. Need to have all your evenings free.
Yes, because you probably just throw away so many attempts. I was just doing some Snupster % runs at the beginning of Rock and Roll just to get the hang of it, and it's actually pretty good to learn some things like that. So it's speed running, because it's just amazing how some of these line up. But even then, for that one good time you upload, you have like 10 runs that you just scratch in the middle.
Yeah, and back when I was doing the no miss, I recorded all of those runs, and I had commentary for all of those, and I could have like 500 runs with commentary, and I would just scrap all of them and then just have a few outtakes. That's what I think took a toll on me. I should have just done like voiceover.
Yes, do it until you have the right ones and then voiceover.
Yeah,
That's
would have been
probably
probably
what I would
wise.
do. Yeah.
It was easier for Rome because he didn't have to do a no miss, so naturally it took like a lot less tries because he was good at the games to begin with. So I meant to ask about the meat bosses because these meat bosses for or not meat bosses, the end game bosses for rock and roll, they have I would say convoluted ways that you can easily kill them all, and I've never really seen anything like that in a Mega Man game. Like, how did you come up with like those different ways to like find out the actual strange weakness for the end game bosses? How did you figure that out?
It was more like I wanted to do something different there because for the Robot Master stages, you do not necessarily have the weapon, so it's perfectly fine that it completely wrecks a boss. But in the end game, you always have all 8. So what everybody does is just cycle through the weapons and see what sticks, and that just seemed lazy. So I wanted to do something where you at least have to do some thinking. Maybe it wasn't even that far out. I mean, the mat grabber where you have to trap the mats and push them into him. The worst thing about this was that nobody figured out that you could aim the fucking thing.
No, because it wasn't conventional.
That actually was a problem because when I sit there watching a YouTube video of someone playing rock and roll, even during testing, I don't care so much what they say, but when he dies, I ask myself, did he deserve to die there? And if the answer is no, that is always bad.
Yeah, you learn a lot by just looking at the gameplay.
Yes, but that was really bad for the mat grabber because of course I want people to figure that out and beat them, and when someone selects the ghost trap and is like that's probably it, and then he doesn't know that he can aim that, and no, I can't hit him with that, and cycles to the next weapon. This is really bad. You, as a developer, you're like, no, don't. But yeah, so that is that. I think the light bulb is the craziest one. That actually had some, not exactly inspiration, but something that made this idea come to mind for the quick kill, where you just hold down the laser. I mean, that's not even the weakness. The weakness is going inside and using the sandstorm.
Yeah.
But the laser was a fun thing. One of my all-time favorite games is Super Metroid. And they did this with one boss where you have a really convoluted secret quick kill. And it's actually pretty funny. In the boss room, there are cannons at the walls. And if you destroy them, it breaks open and the electricity comes out. And the boss sometimes grapples you. And when he does that and you shoot the hook shot in the electricity, you start losing health and he doesn't let go and loses health. And if you just hold the button down and never release the hook shot, you just can't kill him like that.
So yeah, just like that, the influence from other games can step in, like, even if you don't think about it. Like, maybe I've seen this somewhere and you just start making it and realizing, hey, it's a good idea.
Yeah, exactly. And that was it for the light bulb, for the quick kill. I just thought it was fun that you can totally overcharge him and he blows up. And
it's probably frustrating watching even the testers try and figure out those weaknesses.
Depends. I mean, it worked far better on the 2 later bosses because they were a little bit more straightforward. But for the light bulb, I didn't really want to figure out the laser trick because this is something you actually want people to figure out way later. I think this is always a fun thing with older games when someone like 20 years later suddenly finds something that nobody knew.
Yeah, it's kind of like the talks in the school bus.
Yes, exactly. And you don't have that like this anymore because if one guy finds something, the whole internet will know.
Yeah. Things have definitely changed and games have changed in that regard. I don't think developers, they don't even think about these things anymore, like for the most part. They're like, well, They make the games for money. They don't make the games for like experiences anymore. Not a lot of the time.
Some do, but most of the time, I think it's kind of like with movies. At this point, you have this enormous budgets that go into a game, so nothing should go wrong. But that leads them to not experiment, or at least the people who make the money decisions don't want you to try something too different, because that can fail. But I think that makes them less interesting. It's you can see it the best at like the most open world AAA titles, because they just at some point started to all make the same game. So this is just slightly reskinned, even different studios. And if one guy does something that sticks, everyone is copying it. It was. I found that actually interesting, because these Batman Arkham games introduced something they call detective vision, where because you play Batman and Batman doesn't miss clues, you can hit a button and you can basically scan the room, so you don't have to try and click everything like in an old LucasArts adventure. So that was certainly nice, but people liked that, and then every game did that. The Batman had his detective vision, and no matter what you played, it was like, press this button to use your vampire senses. And if it was science fiction, it's here's your scanner. And it just the same mechanic coming into every game.
It does even in the Hitman games. Like, what are you doing? You had like a sense. You can see through walls, and it's like, I always take those things out.
Yeah, and it doesn't even make a lot of sense that Agent 47 could do that. It's
no. No, but there's a game. Have you played Spelunky?
Not yet, no.
Okay, so Spelunky 1 is basically you go through this cave, has different kind of levels and such, but then there's a lot of things that the community has to find together, and that's very different from games from today. A lot of secrets to find and uncover. So that's one example where the developer actually cares about what they're making. But that's really rare nowadays.
And again, it's more like an indie game. I think of the big ones, I get the impression that CD Projekt Red cares. That was The Witcher 3 was a game that made me tolerate open world, and I actually hate that. So,
you know, I've tried Witcher 3 times now. I've started it. I played it for, I think I've given it max 2 hours, and I just feel like it never starts. So I just never played it any more than that.
Actually, an interesting part about what difficulty did you use?
I've got no idea. Probably the normal one.
They totally did something that I do not agree with. When the game starts, you select the difficulty, and you select it without having any context for that decision. That already is a bit strange, because that's something I always hate. Everybody has different opinions of what is normal, easy, or hard.
Yes.
And, so just throw that in. I mean, even if you have difficulty settings, let me play and then let me change them, and make the standard the one you think is the most fun. Because if you don't know what you think is the most fun, why should I care? But The Witcher has this very strange thing where normal actually doesn't require you to use any of the mechanics. I did notice that, because you have all this stuff you can do, like dodge and parry and counterattack, and actually to defeat monsters you can use alchemy and make stuff that protects you from that specific monster, and poisons that actually are the weakness of this monster. That's all great, and you do not have to use any of that on normal difficulty. You can just stand in front of an enemy, mash buttons, and he will die. And this is
oh jeez,
this is amazingly dumb to call this normal, because I don't think it's normal to not engage with the game's mechanics.
Yeah,
and
no.
It works way better if you do that on hard. And actually, this in this case it's designed around that, because a lot of games are designed for normal, and if you use hard, they don't become enjoyably hard, they just start to suck, which is why a lot of these games that are intentionally hard just gain this huge following instantly, like I don't know what everything from software does. People are basically just starved for someone actually designing it to be hard, because just changing numbers just fucks it up in both directions. I mean, if you're the most easy modes, they just give the enemies less health or whatever, and it doesn't get easier, it just gets boring.
Yeah, that's why I always pick the normal difficulty or the medium one, because I'm like, well, that is supposed to be how the developers intended the game to be normally played. So if I pick hard, it's gonna be probably artificially difficult with like you said more HP and stuff like that. And then it's like, well, do I need to do that or not? I don't like difficulty settings on games. I think they should just like rank up in difficulty as you go. I don't think you need difficulty settings. And the way I talked about this with, I think, Mega Felix, the way they did Mega Man 10's difficulty is just to like have the different moves for the robot masters in harder difficulties, and you're missing on those if you play on normal. Yeah, you never see them.
The moves is one thing, and I think easy just becomes patronizing. It's like every pit has this floating platforms suddenly, even ones where you don't think how you could even fall into that. This is basically insulting. It's
treating the players like dogs, as I always say.
But that's interesting. A lot of people get angry when someone does something like Wolfenstein, where the easy mode is named "Can I Play, Daddy?" and suddenly your character has a pacifier in his mouth and something like that. At least that is so offensive that you know they aren't serious. For Mega Man 10, this. If you select easy, that's basically the game going, oh wait, you are that stupid, let me place protection everywhere.
It's probably meant for like 4-year-olds and such, but then I go back and realize that, hey, I was 4 when I beat Mega Man 4. Why do people need this? It's weird. I just don't think difficulty settings should be a thing.
It depends. It can work. I mean, the most big budget titles that come out, these are basically glorified choose your own adventure books anyway. So I can totally see that someone wants to just see the story. So okay, yes. For God's sake, crank it down to easy and go through it. That I can see the point. But if a game is actually more about the gameplay and the mechanics, then at least I think the developer should tell you what he wanted you to do. This is Mega Man 11 in Japanese actually called the normal mode original spec. I think that is smart. They translated it differently for the international release, but at least if I read these, I exactly know what they think is the original spec. This works fine, and a lot of games actually started, even if they have options to lock them behind a screen that at least explains that now you're fiddling with options that are not how the game is meant to be played. I think this makes a lot of sense, because if you just put it in the menu, some options are just more change the gameplay more than others. And if you treat I don't know, unlimited lives the same way you treat changing the volume, then this is a problem. You should at least have that little pop-up that tells you now you're fiddling with stuff that changed the game in a way we do not intend. And it actually It actually has the benefit that if something fucks that up, you have warned the player. So if he changes the options so much that he ruins its own fun, you're not responsible anymore.
No, I don't think developers should be scary or scared of like people not being able to beat their games. I mean, usually that still haunts you, and you're like, there's that one game I didn't beat. I have to go back and do it someday. It's not like, I don't think you have to be scared about the fact that everyone's not going to be able to beat it on their first try. I think a lot of developers just want people to just beat the game with ease.
Yeah, you should not be scared of that. And these are actually the games that stick with you. Because, like I said, to this day, I will play Dr. Wily's Revenge every once in a while. And it took us like weeks to beat this game in the first go. But that sticks with me, and a lot of games that I have just finished somewhere in my life, I never come back into.
Yeah, because they're too easy. Easy games, you beat them once, you never go back. And hard games, you're like, I can play this. I can play this over every once in a while, and it's always as fun.
Yeah, especially if you haven't played it in a while, it will just start kicking your butt again. So.
Yes. Like if I went, there's always bad games that are hard, like Rockman and Forte. I'm sure if I went back to that now, I couldn't beat a single stage in a while now.
Yes, but that's different. You can be hard for the wrong reasons. You can be easy for the wrong reasons when it's just boring. That obviously is something that is usually not what they call creators' intent, because if we wanted to make something hard and then there's an obvious exploit and it becomes easy, or the other way around, if a game is hard because it sucks, that's not intent. That's just a mistake. And in a lot of cases, these very old games haven't aged that well. I mean, a lot of them were hard because they were bad.
Yeah, and they had like 4 stages that were impossible.
Yes.
If you really think about it, the amount of money you had to lose to get one of these games, these NES games, in like full price. I don't know what the US had, but it's probably been like $60 or something for an NES game. And little do you know, it has 4 stages in it, but because it's so hard, it's gonna take you a year to beat. But once you know what you're doing, it's like, well, I beat it in 4 minutes now. That's a lot of money for 4 minutes.
Yes, but it never was 4 minutes when you played it the first time. But yes, that was something as well. We didn't have a lot of money when I was a child, and my parents were always like, "You won't get another Game Boy game if you haven't beaten the one we got you last time."
Oh my god, that's harsh.
And then there was this point where my third game ever was Dr. Wily's Revenge, and at this point you are like, "Oh my god, I will never have more than 3 Game Boy games."
Imagine getting Silver Surfer and you're like, you can't get another game until you beat this. How did you find the composer? Because he's from Finland. I was like, I've never heard of this fellow, but he made an awesome soundtrack for rock and roll.
He had some free samples on a site for game resources, and I like those, but they weren't exactly 8 bits. They would have felt out of place, but I like the style, and I just wrote an email to him and found out he actually does this for money. So it was I just hired him.
Yeah, and on his website he was like, with X amount of experience.
Yes.
That's gotta be a Finnish thing. There's no way.
Yeah, I think I was the first one who pointed that out. When
yes.
I contacted 2 Finnish guys, and both were like, with X years of experience.
It's a common thing here when you apply for a job. That's just what you say. I think it stems from that. And actually, going back to the previous topic briefly, now I remember what I was going to say. I told Megafilex, my father was a trucker, and he did a lot of trucking in Germany, and he brought me a lot of NES games from there. So some of the games I had were in German, like Doctor's One, for example. So I couldn't understand English or even read Finnish at the time, and then I didn't really know that the games were in German because I couldn't read them anyway. So now looking back, it's really strange that they would translate some of the games.
As they did, and actually, that's a funny thing with German translations. Nintendo Germany was for a very long time, actually, just 10 minutes from where I sit right now. So it was very close, and they had this habit when they translated something to just include the names of places and people they knew, just because they thought it's fun. But this is very strange if you play like an action RPG like Secret of Evermore, and everything is named like the towns just around you. Because they are so close. When they did it, obviously we noticed here.
Yeah.
But they did a lot of actually silly stuff too, where they just would include random references to TV shows that were on at the time, which is a bit dumb, because then the games don't age that well. Because like the German version of Secret of Mana has references to German TV shows that nobody would get today. And the game in itself could actually be a timeless classic, but for the German player, it's like, what the fuck is going on?
Did they translate Castlevania too?
No, I don't. Platformers and stuff like that, they didn't translate, I think. I'm surprised you have a German DuckTales. Most of the stuff was English. That was one of the reasons I learned that even before we had English at school, because I wanted to know what the Robot Masters' names were.
Yeah, DuckTales 1 and 2, I have the German version still. Both.
Okay, but yes, they did translate some platformers, because Kirby's Adventure is definitely in German.
Yeah. And when I was really trying to get a lot of NES games like 10 years ago to add to my collection, Shadowgate was one game I wanted, because I never really got to experience it, but then I realized it's kind of like you just keep dying over and over and then just redoing this stuff. But I got the French version. That was translated to French. And I was like, oh, well, I can't play this. Got another one. That was in French. So now I have 2 French copies of Shadowgate. I was like, okay, let me do this one more time. There's one more copy. And guess what? That's also in French. Now I have 3 French Shadowgates. Did they also translate manuals?
Yes, they did. That just reminds me of another funny thing, because the manual of Mega Man X was translated, and the person who did that just looked at a picture of Zero, and our nouns are actually gendered. So if you want to say something like the leader of the Maverick Hunters, the word you use for leader will give away if it's a woman or a man. And the person who translated that looked at Zero and just decided it's a woman. Okay. So I believed that for years, and then Mega Man 2 came out, and I was like, wait, what? And it's not like, especially the illustration in the first Mega Man X manual, you can easily believe that. You can't even blame the guy who translated it.
And then you have the der das and those things.
Yes.
I can't believe I've studied German for 5 years and I still can't. Ich habe eine Katze. That's as much as I can do.
Well,
it's all wasted.
But the language is kind of convoluted. I think if you do not grow up learning that, it's somewhat hard to get into. We do a lot of silly things that make actually no sense.
Yeah, kind of like Swedish. We in school you had the choice first. It's you either learn Swedish or German, and even if you pick German, you're still gonna have to learn Swedish later. So I picked German and never really learned either of those. I know no Swedish at all, and German very little. But English, for some reason, growing up with games and seeing the words over and over, like start a new game, quit game, you start to learn what they mean, and then I think that helped a lot. Games taught me how to speak English. It's not very common in Finland to be that good in English. It's like you get by if you need to, but it's not common.
it's not that common here either. It's just like I played a lot of video games and they were English, so that was one. And then I noticed when watching movies, sometimes you just can't translate a pun or whatever, and it gets really awkward in the translation. And I just started watching movies in English, and it worked fine. And it's actually more interesting to see them in their original language. I mean, I wouldn't watch a French movie in English. That just makes no sense. But
yeah, I've been to Germany 6 times now, I believe, and I've always used English, and I've had no problems. Everyone's always understood everything I said. So you're doing a good job.
Okay.
With English. It's always, you can't go to Germany without drinking beer. That's impossible. It just happens every time. You don't even intend to. You have a beer culture.
We certainly have, and depending on where you come from, it can actually get really awkward because, like, if an American comes here, he won't expect that our beer actually has alcohol in it. I mean, like a certain amount. It's way more than they do. So if they drink like 5 beers because they normally can, they will be completely drunk.
Do you remember the percentage, like the average that you would have in a beer? Because I think like in here it's like 5.5 or something. I don't know what the Americans are doing.
Way less, and we have some beers that have easily 8 or 10%.
Oh yeah, I think I've seen like a few, but that's not common here either.
These are the strong ones here as well, but they do exist, and they can catch people by surprise.
Huh. So, well, I haven't noticed anything in Germany, so I guess we're even. What's a Mega Man game that most people hate, but you like?
I'm thinking. I actually like 3 on Game Boy, probably way more than I should. Because
you probably have like a soft spot for Mega Man for the Game Boy to begin with the.
I obviously have, yes. But then again, it's the other way around because I do not like 5 that much on Game Boy, and everyone else does. I mean, it's fine, but it's compared to the other ones, it actually seems boring because most of the stages are just like Space Factory.
Yeah.
And once I have seen that 4 times, I'm like, what the fuck are you doing?
It's really
so
cool on the
different
first
normally.
playthrough.
That seemed dull. But yes, I have. But other than that, I mean, okay, a lot of people dislike 9, and it's easily my favorite one, but that's different because that is not that unusual. I think people either love that or hate that.
I would put that on the generation gap again. I think new people to Mega Man would dislike 9, and probably us grandpas like it because it's doing its game design in a way that is familiar to us. It's very familiar feeling playing that game.
Yes, and funny enough, it really is trying to suck up to Mega Man 2, but it's just that much better that I don't care.
Yeah, it's kind of like the weapons are similar but improved, and just the level design and the overall feel. It's like the soundtrack is kind of similar. It's just better in every way. So if they wanted to redo 2, I think they succeeded.
Yes, and then, but I'm not sure. 10 has probably more of the feeling of 2 because, like, I'm not sure the Wily stages are like that, and the Block Devil is kinda
fucking Block Devil.
It's kinda Pico Maker on crack. I don't know.
Yeah, it's so bad though. If people say it's not so bad, you have the whole room. No, more like you have 2 tiles. That's relatively safe. God, I need to make that list.
No, that one is really awkward. I really hate that. But then again, again it works in the other direction because a lot of people like 10, and I really don't. I can't even tell you exactly why. It just feels like something about the stage design is off. Where they sometimes the speed running tactic is the easiest way to go through some of that, and I think that is not how this should work. It's like if you play it for the first time, you are not going to like right into a room and as fast as you can. And in fact, you can tell from rock and roll that I disagree, because I usually like to kill people who just rush in.
Yes. Yeah, the amount of times I try to tell people, like, just like, wait, just look at the situation before you just run through things, and they're like, it's so hard, I can't do this. And they game over 6 times without thinking, they just run through, and why do I keep dying? This is such a hard game. Like, if you just stop for a while and look, you'll do good.
Yeah, especially since if you place enemies, they have to attack exactly that spot where the player will go if he just tries to rush through, because where else would they attack? That's just what makes the most sense, because otherwise you can just ignore them. But that gets a lot of people killed. Yeah, and
it's I always feel like I notice when I do that. I'm losing my. I guess you lose the interest to do good, and then if you keep dying and dying, you're like, well, I don't care now. I just want to go through this, and then you keep dying more because you don't pay attention anymore. But I notice when I do that, I'm like, well, I need to slow down because obviously this is not working. But for some people, that bell doesn't ring.
You notice, and most of the other testers of rock and roll did too, because the sentence that I heard the most when watching your footage was always like, one of you died, no matter who, and the next thing was, that was my fault.
Yes.
And sometimes I even didn't agree and made it easier and didn't tell anyone. But that was your usual reaction to most of the times you died. That was actually, I think that is a good thing from a tester, that he can recognize that, because I know there are a lot of people that will always blame the game, and, but you have no use for them when you test. It's like,
yeah, and I think you need a lot of different testers with like different backgrounds and different ideas. If you just have 7 Nicos, well, it's not going to do much.
Yes, but I think to the most part we had that. A lot of people will probably disagree, because we mostly ask people who are like really into the classics and like them and play the old school stuff. But that was more like, that was the kind of game I wanted to make. So I obviously asked people who could help me do that. It would almost be unfair to include someone else in the testing, because everyone he said is like, yes, I understand you feel it that way, but I'm going to ignore that. that would get really frustrating for that person.
So I guess the most amount of criticism for rock and roll came from the difficulty. I think that's the biggest thing that pops out. But it's from the people who didn't really grow up with Mega Man. I haven't seen like a person of our age have the same complaints that it's too hard. I don't think I've seen a single person say it's too difficult.
Most of the time when you talk to someone on the internet, you don't know the age, so I'm not sure, but that certainly plays into it. But I think we already are, even for our generation, like the more crazy people who want to figure that shit out. But I certainly know people I went to school with were a lot of times just out for the most easy, unrewarding way ever. I can remember that when I played Wing Commander, like a guy I knew that was interesting on a lot of levels, because he came to me in school and was like, I figured out a trick. If you press Alt and O, you can turn yourself invincible. And I was like, Alt and O, that's the options. That's in the fucking manual. And you can turn yourself invincible. Why the hell would I do that? I knew that was there. I never used it.
Things you learn and don't care about.
Yeah. Yeah, but he couldn't even understand that I wouldn't just turn myself invincible and play through the game. But they existed back then as well. I think it's just like now you have the internet and opinions will clash.
Just having opinions is a crime.
Yes, that's another thing, but I don't care that much.
I think when I say that the age comes into question, I think it's, especially in Discord, it's easy to decipher how old someone is by the way they write criticism. That's always an alarming thing for me when I see people just bashing something, not giving proper criticism. Then well, maybe I should not have discussions with this person. They are so tangled with hate towards the game, possibly, that they are just giving criticism blindly because they are, I guess, not thinking about how the game was designed and for who and why, and it's hard to please everyone.
Yes, and I think that is something you have. A lot of people are basically unable to recognize that they weren't the target demographic for something. And that goes both ways, by the way. It's easy to forget that because I'm on one end of the spectrum with Mega Man Rock and Roll, and obviously everyone who wants an easy game is just bashing on me. It goes the other way too. Every time a good walking simulator comes out, everyone is just offended, and I don't just let them play. What the fuck are you doing?
Yeah, who cares? Just play the things you like to play.
Especially, it's not like if you had prevented them from making a walking simulator, they would have instead made this super challenging shooter that you would like. That would not have happened. So why do you even care? Just walk away. You'll be fine. But it's the same with hard games, especially since I think people see that with games like Dark Souls have a really strong community because they help each other get through that completely crazy shit. And people see that they are having really fun engaging with that game, and then they go like, I want that, but I don't want to engage with that game. And it just doesn't work like that.
And when I beat Dark Souls close to when it came out, and at some point when I said, well, Dark Souls is a pretty good game, and I remember somebody from my audience said that you don't have to say that just because it's cool. I was like, I haven't even followed any reviews. I don't know what people even think about the game. I just said I kind of liked it. I don't really go for reviews and such like that for opinions from others. I just like to form my own.
Yes, and especially with these hard games, it's gonna be a problem anyway because this will be a person who is paid to write reviews, and he's probably on a schedule and has a review copy. So, and if you are on a schedule to write a review about Dark Souls and have to finish it in a certain amount of time, this is going to ruin your day or week or whatever. Because this is certainly not how it's meant to be played. You have to just stop when it gets too frustrating and get back to it another time. So I don't even know if that review would be worth that much, because I can perfectly understand that the person will be pissed, but it will not be because the game is bad.
Yeah, some people watch reviews, and some people watch my channel just so they don't have to play the games. They can just look at them.
But for the most part, this is a good thing in the case of Nico Evaluates, because a lot of these games I really do not want to play.
I don't want either, but now it's kind of like, well, I have to do it now.
I found a few ones. I didn't know about Super Fighting Robot. I learned about that on your show. Before that, I had only played Unlimited, and that was like, oh, fan games can be like that. Let's look at some more. And oh my god, what is this? but Super Fighting Robot, I had a lot of fun with that. And recently, they had the demo of Y+1 that actually looks really, really nice.
Yeah, it does. I think Rock Force, Super Fighting Robot, Unlimited, and Rock and Roll pretty much at the top. Probably what comes to popularity right now. And of course, Mega Man Maker. but that's kind of different thing.
That's an entirely different thing. I don't exactly have that much drive to play that. It's just like a completely different approach. And it's perfectly fine. Let them have fun, but it doesn't do it for me. I want my 8 robot masters and ideally 8 new weapons I've never seen before.
Exactly.
And a very important thing, I want my Wily.
Yeah.
That's something I heard a lot about rock and roll. It was quite funny. Why is Wily the villain again?
Yeah, why?
You might have noticed he always is. I think it's actually too late to change that. We are 11 games in.
Mr. X.
If they had done that on, I don't know, Mega Man 4 or what, or the better 3. I mean, 3 started with Wily is a good guy now, and he's working on Gamma with Dr. Light. If like that, these were actually some kind of threat from the outside, you would have a precedent for that. But right now, especially a project like that it's a very big thing, especially for me because I did it alone. So
yes.
I'm not throwing that away, my one chance to make a Wily fight. And especially, I would have to come up with something that is really, really a lot better than just using Wily. So I'm not just making up another mad scientist. That's just dumb.
What's gonna top that? A legendy legend who's a good programmer would probably one of those.
That was Rocks, wasn't it?
Yeah, Mega Man Rocks. A legendy legend that everyone cares about is now the villain. Yes. What would have happened if they had like Cossack and Mega Man 4 actually be the bad guy? They could have had like different countries for like other games that all had different doctors.
That could probably have worked, yes, but well, they just didn't. And then I think by Mega Man 6 it was actually fun because you watch the intro and are like, oh my god, this is so Dr. Wily with a fake beard. This is actually amazing. I love that.
There would have been a problem, like eventually at some point. You're like, okay, Mega Man 4 is Russia. Okay, Mega Man 5, let's make it Italy. Mega Man 6, how about Saudi Arabia? Oh, we have a problem. People would have gotten offended at some point. Even like they had the Russian team for like Mega Man 4. It's still kind of like, but it's nothing too bad.
Some people are overreacting to that. There's a difference if something is just a cliche that that doesn't harm anyone. Like I don't know. In the case of Cossack, yes, this looks very stereotypically Russian with these towers and these onion roofs, but some buildings at least look like that. And I'm kind of used to it because the fun thing is a lot of like Japanese anime love Germany, but it will always look like the inner city of Heidelberg. And this is very distinct, so you don't have that actually that much, but that is always what they are going for, and it's perfectly fine because at least that exists. It's not like an offensive stereotype. That's just not true. That is where I think problems start. But making it look in a certain way that people recognize when they are not from that country, that's
really cool.
That's just a good thing. That makes it easier to spot where you are. And for Mega Man 6, for example, because you mentioned Saudi Arabia, they had that for Flame Man.
Yeah, Flame Man, the oil turbines and such.
Yes, but there wasn't something too bad, and it's like Saudi Arabia has oil. What is there to be offended about? That is fine. I mean, I'm not sure about some of the other ones, but they did it with Mega Man 6, and every Robot Master was at least meant to be in a different country.
Yeah. I kind of like rock and roll with the Phasmits, and some people actually said like, hey, you gotta do that.
Yeah, but actually most people did like the Phasmits.
Yes. I always say like, those Sand Team stages, they're my favorites. And I think before you even knew about it, I was like, if there's a stage like that, I'm gonna really love it. And then you already had it done before I even mentioned it.
Yes, that was funny because I was just working on Dune Woman's stage when you said that, and I was almost done. And you were like, I always liked sand levels, so I just posted a screenshot 1 minute later because I was working on it anyway.
That's just always been my favorite theme, and like in Mario 2 with the like the sand world. That's my favorite one. You dig the sand and such. It's just a lot of fun for some reason. It's a great team. You can do a lot of things with it. And the addition to water in those stages can come into play in different ways, and you can have mechanics around them that it just always seems to work. How did you figure out what themes to have for different stages? Did you study the thing at all, or did the ideas just come to you?
At one point, I just wrote down what locations I wanted. That actually came first.
Mm-hmm.
And then I designed robot masters around that.
Yes, probably the most sane way to do it.
Yes, because I wanted these to be different. As I said, that always rubbed me the wrong way by Mega Man 5 on Game Boy, where everything just looks the same.
Yeah.
But so here I wanted to make 8 places that are different enough to be interesting, and then I populated them with robot masters, if you will.
Mm-hmm. So when you're thinking about places to add, you're like, I want a Russian stage, then I want a snow stage, Vancouver. Wait a minute. For some reason, you come up with very specific things out of nowhere sometimes.
Sometimes the ideas were more specific than others. I just wrote that down, and when I was like, I don't know, Ice and North Pole, I right away wrote down Mario 2 Wales, because that was the first thing that just popped to my mind. In other cases, not so much, but it was just like, I want to have different places. What do I do? So I do a volcano, I do a like the North Pole. That was the first process, and everything followed that. But not everything I had ideas right away. It's like sometimes it was more abstract. The forest stage, I was like, okay, let's go for insects, and that was everything I had, and then I just tried to figure out what insects to use.
If you told me now that you're gonna make a stage that has insects, I would be like, that's never gonna work. That's like the way they did in Rambo on the NES. Just Rambo fighting like spiders and flies. But it amazingly works ridiculously good in rock and roll. Ever played the Rambo game on the NES?
No, I never have. I don't have that much NES games. Like I said, it was like I saw that there were Mega Man games and I needed to have them, but otherwise I have some very specific NES games, but I was more of a Super Nintendo kid.
Yeah, we never really had Super Nintendo here. None of
yes,
my friends
you mentioned that you went right for PlayStation 1. Huh?
Yeah. Never even knew it existed. I was like, oh, there's a Super Nintendo? Okay. But a lot of games that are on Super Nintendo now, and when I tried them, I don't really like them. Because they went for graphics over gameplay most of the time. We have like these huge characters that move too fast, and the screen is not orienting right. And there's a few gems, like you said, like Super Metroid and such, but I think there's more good NES games than there are good SNES games.
A thing that I noticed, Nintendo themselves had this habit of revisiting things that didn't go so well and just really improving them. Because Zelda: A Link to the Past is really good, and it was just like Zelda 1, and this time we do it right. And the same thing as Super Metroid. It meant that they even visit the same locations, and sometimes the graphics are intentionally worse than they could be to look more like the NES. That's actually amazing, because that was, don't want to sound too hipster, but they did retro before it was cool.
Isn't the ending of Metroid 1 it's like right above you as you start, and I think you realize that in like Super Metroid. I could be wrong, but
yeah, no, that's exactly it. You go backwards. You land on the planet, and you enter where you come out in Metroid 1, and go backwards. You even walk past the giant glass where Mother Brain is in the first game. That was really nice, and they actually do have a lot of fun with that. Right before you fight Kraid, there is like this smaller version of him, but he's more of the size than he was in Metroid 1, though you might as well think this is the boss, and then you kill him, go in the next room, and this giant dragon shows up. This is actually pretty funny.
They censored like a lot of games for like NES. If NES games had like crosses and stuff, Nintendo would take those out. And I think, well, they missed a lot on Castlevania 3. I think I remember I think they just didn't. It was probably like a Monday for someone, and they just went through the game too fast or something. Didn't really pay attention. A lot of crosses remained.
Here we had that more where they tried to remove violence from games, and sometimes that got really funny. It's like
lions.
Violence.
Oh, I was like, they're trying to remove lions from the games. Wait a minute, what's wrong with lions?
That makes no sense. No, they wanted to tone down the violence of video games, and sometimes it was really funny because Command and Conquer, the very first one, they just decided that these aren't soldiers, these are cyborgs. So it wasn't a barracks, it was a cyborg factory, and they came out and they actually removed all the blood, and they made a new sound. So if a tank drives over a soldier, it has the sound of like crushing metal and stuff. They went that far, and then Command and Conquer Red Alert came out, and it took place in World War II. Oh. And the funny thing is, they just went with it and kept calling it a cyborg factory.
Oh,
and
God.
So it's amazing because you're in World War II and you're playing as the Russians, and they have cyborg factories.
Yeah, so they've changed some European versions for a lot of games too. Like Contra was Probotector in Europe, and
yes, it was.
And Jorin Decilius, the guy, had a helmet in the European version, just to make it less violent. There's some. You as a German, I don't know if you know or not. What's with censorship in Germany? Like, there's a lot of that there for some reason, or has been. Is there like, what's the the core reason? Do you know?
It has been. I think that got a lot better when video games were more of a thing. I think when that started, like in the very first steps of the medium, they just didn't know what to do with it and were really afraid that it could be too violent.
Yeah, like blood has changed to flowers, and
but yeah, but sometimes even movie studios they are just careful. It's not even that we would censor something, but they are already afraid that some people might be offended and already put it on the market like that. So that's not that is more self-censorship than anything.
Because in Finland we actually, at least here, we always made fun of Germany. Like when we were kids, like, oh, they're gonna censor that, we're gonna censor this and that. Then actually seeing them do that is like, well, they changed the blood to nuts and bolts now. Okay. We just laughed about it.
Yes, but so did we, because once you picked up that this is what was happening, it just got hilarious. This was... There was a time where this was amazingly funny. I'm not even sure. There was one shooter where they replaced they changed the whole story. They replaced human enemies with aliens. I'd have to Google what that was, but I can remember people talking about that, and that was where this got really silly.
Yeah, Contra changed every enemy into like robots.
Yes, and probably that's why they gave him the helmet, though he could be a robot and then nobody dies, or whatever was the reasoning behind that.
Yeah, oil just leaks out.
That's actually pretty good. You just have to recolor the blood then, and you don't have to make new graphics.
What did you do with Mortal Kombat? What comes to censorship? Did you ban that game or something in Germany?
I don't think we did. I think in that case it just had an age restriction. And censored is not the exactly right term anyway, because we have an index where we put things on that you are not allowed to advertise, but you can still sell them.
I see.
So that was, if you went to a shop that sold video games, he wouldn't be able to have Mortal Kombat 3 in the shopping window or whatever, but and he probably couldn't have it open in the shop. But if you went in and said, I want Mortal Kombat 3, he would have just given you the game, you get
under the
money
counter,
and everything is fine. Not even under the counter, because that's what he would have been allowed to do. But it just gets silly with movies where they do that, because when the movie was popular, there always was a censored version, and that would be sold. And that is strange, except in cases like, I don't know, Terminator 1, where they make really stupid cuts to get rid of the violence. And but anyway, you could easily buy a regular version of Terminator 1. You just had to ask for it, and you could buy it. But the version that was advertised and was sold everywhere was always this really stupid thing where it's actually amazing. He knocks on the door. The first Sarah Connor he kills opens, and he's like, Sarah Connor, yes, and then it cuts. So it's completely pointless. He's just going around asking people for their names.
Those must be some valuable movies right now, German versions. Special cut. You still have to draw a nice little piece of art in paint.
With the signature. Yes, I will do that.
It's gonna be fantastic when we have like 6 names on the board. In any case, you've been listening to the NEPodcast, and thanks Dennis for showing up, and hope you come back around again at some point.
Yeah. Bye.